Hey, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good overnight, good midnight. Welcome to
Good.
Azure Flash News, whatever time it is. We're live on YouTube. And if you get a
That's
chance,
right.
go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We'd appreciate it if you do that while we get started. Rick, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good greetings in whatever time zone you are. Sorry, I
That's
had a
right.
hitch on my foot. And as Mark said, welcome to Azure Flash News, episode 95. We
Yes.
are ticking up towards the 100th episode, which is
Yes.
pretty exciting.
And it is September the 8th. Uh,
Yes, it is.
in Minnesota, this is the traditional first day of school. Did you have kids go to school today, Rick?
I did. My
Wait, hold on.
oldest.
You have
So
to. Did they quote quote go to school?
physically, actually, yes, today. So my oldest
Oh.
had to show up on campus today.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing a majority of what they're doing will be virtual, but he's got some components. For example, he's taking some classes at the local technical college right
Oh,
now as a
nice.
senior in high school.
Yep.
And so that part is going to be partially in class. And then my daughter, as I probably similar to your situation, my daughter will be in class 4 days a week.
Yep. Yep. And I have one who went to high school online today, but she's actually going to the high school tomorrow for the afternoon
Oh,
get together.
okay.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Gotcha.
So anyway,
Yes.
we
The
have
brave new world.
Rick and I have kids in the same school district, so we're kind of exploring the new world. And my son, who's in middle school, they actually delayed school by 2 days, so that
Oh,
was kind of
yes.
exciting. Anyway, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Although that's
No.
kind of what's going on today
It is interesting.
you
I
know,
mean, it is kind of front and center of everything we do.
that's
But
right.
having said that, the world doesn't stop spinning,
No, it doesn't.
and Azure doesn't stop getting new features,
No, it doesn't. It turns out,
as it turns
even though
out,
kids are kind of not going to school, the
right?
Microsoft Azure developers are still going to work.
That's correct. In fact, and so let's touch on that. So, to that point, there's been a few things that have been developed. There have been a few announcements. There have been a few blog posts that we'd like to talk about. One of which subjects centers around an announcement that should be coming within the next day or two, but we're going to scoop it
Uh-huh.
a little bit.
Preview,
It's been
just a
it's
little
been
preview.
soft announced, but we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about some cross cloud management from a
Yeah,
costing
we'll
perspective.
leave it at that.
Yep, absolutely. We'll talk about building critical applications within Kubernetes, AKS, in Azure. There's more than just deploying and forgetting.
Yep, that's right.
And last but not least, simplifying some. We'll just say simplifying the orchestration of billing,
Hmm.
and I'll leave it at that because that can mean a lot of different things.
We'll just we're gonna have a little anticipation,
That's right.
So,
Absolutely.
okay, well let's get started here.
Yes.
I am going to switch the view here. Okay, there we go. So,
Okay.
oh, wrong one. Okay,
Oops, that's okay.
there we
There you
go.
go.
There we got the right one now.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so bicep. Okay, can we just first
Flex
say
it.
this is a bad pun, but
I know.
we'll go with it. Uh,
I know.
so you guys know it's the ARM API, right? Well,
Right.
so this is the bicep project. Although I don't think it's going to keep this name. I think eventually they're going to rename it, but because it's a little bit too bad of a pun. Uh,
Flexing your arm muscles, or
you know,
yeah, it's
show me your guns, Rick. Come on, buddy.
exactly. I
Um,
got none.
but anyway, so well, I'll just give it a start here.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that Bicep is. One is it's open source. It
Okay.
is in the public GitHub repo, so you can
Yep.
see it. You can submit a PR if you want. You or I, me, Rick, you, me, or somebody else.
Anybody?
And
My
then,
dog.
but here's what it is. Bicep is an ARM DSL. Rick, you want to explain what that is?
Absolutely. So what we've done is we've taken the Azure Resource Manager um, metadata or deployment framework, and we've actually wrapped a domain-specific language around it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say domain-specific, it's specific to ARM.
Yeah.
So what's really cool about this project, Bicep, which currently is an experimental language, soon to change,
Yes.
what's kind of fun about it is you can actually write in this domain-specific language, basically with one command line, you can basically compile it, and it'll spit out the ARM template, a well-formed, valid ARM template that can then be used to deploy resources in Azure.
And why are we doing this? Because people have always said, what have they always said, Rick? ARM templates
Uh,
are
well,
complicated. They're hard to
they
write.
are,
They're hard to
right.
read.
We've got nested resource sections. We've got nested ARM templates. There's a lot of different nuances to ARM templates. Let's be completely honest, right? And with JSON, because JSON is so powerful, right? Because of the fact that you can have a very loosely structured, it still has to be well formed and valid, but the object structure, the entity structure within the JavaScript object notation, it doesn't. It doesn't have to look like a tabular, like a traditional data table in a SQL database, right?
Hmm.
And so there's some, every Azure resource can have a different set of properties, for example.
Hmm.
Every Azure resource may have some, for example, some may have service principals assigned to them that you can assign to them as a property. Some may not. And sometimes it's just kind of, I find myself personally going back and doing some searching to figure out, syntax and all that stuff. And what's interesting about Bicep is when you start typing, if you download the extensions and run the command line install for VS Code,
Yep.
you'll actually see IntelliSense, you'll
Hmm.
see type ahead, you'll see all the cool features that you would expect to see from any other language in VS Code.
Because, well, this is what I think is cool, is because it's not just generic JSON.
Right.
Now it's actually its own language. And
Experiment.
you're right. And so it's like, it does get its own extension. I think they're calling it Bicep, or is it
Yep.
called?
It
Yeah,
is
I think it's
.bicep.
dot bicep.
Yep.
So we're going with
You create a
.bicep.
main.bicep file. Yep.
So you create your bicep file. So we're going with bicep. Somehow
Yep.
or other, I kind of think this might stick. It's kind of ingrained everywhere,
Unfortunately.
but we'll see how it goes. But anyway, you create a .bicep file and then you download today at least you download the physics, which is
Hmm.
the file that goes into Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio and provides the understanding and linting of this bicep language, and it's a specific bicep language. It looks a little bit like YAML, sort of, a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also TypeScripty. I've been told I'm not much of a JavaScript TypeScript programmer, but I've
I
heard
would
it's kind of
say I
TypeScripty.
would argue personally that it's closer to TypeScript than it is to YAML.
Yeah,
But that's just my own personal opinion.
yeah. So the thing that I think is interesting about the YAML or that reminds me of YAML is just that the indentation matters. But
Yes.
anyway,
Big time.
so that's ARM. That's the
Yep.
ARM DSL bicep. And so the idea here is to give us a specific language that is dedicated to ARM that we Microsoft can put domain specific terminology and a domain specific set of, like for instance, here's one idea. If you have a resource and it's
Hmm.
your storage account,
Yep.
and you want to reference the storage account keys, now in this new Bicep language, you can give the storage account a name, a friendly name, so that inside of Bicep, you can reference that storage account by name.
Yep.
And so if you've used Terraform, that's a little bit like Terraform, how Terraform does it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but the great part here is that now we have this domain-specific language that basically turns an ARM template into IL, into an intermediate language.
Intermediate language.
Yeah,
That's
that's
correct.
right.
I'm glad you brought that up because that effectively is what it becomes as an intermediary
Yeah.
language, right? Just like when you've got some of the different, well, .NET, for example, right? You
Yep.
got a MSIL, so you've got all those intermediary languages that aren't quite native, but they're not quite script, if you will, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of the best of both worlds in that respect.
That's right. That's right. So, so here, first of all, and I think I want to reiterate what you said something about this. This is experimental. I just want to reiterate this.
Yes,
I know you said
and
it,
I
but
kept I kept saying that for a reason.
the presentation I saw on this the other day said we will break you. uh,
Yes,
so this is very
not
early.
morally,
Yep.
not psychologically,
No.
but
Yes.
we will make changes that will break your
Okay.
code.
We have enough psychological breakage going on
We really
because
do.
of COVID. We don't need any
Oh,
more. So
no,
this will
none.
not
I can
break.
handle no more.
Yeah, that's enough. But and I think they're aiming at a couple of versions down the road that we will be able to sort of say, okay, we're done. We're not going
Yep.
to be doing backwards breakage as much anymore. And so, but the idea here is, you really want to give people the option to, adopt this language. And for now, it's just a compilation. but I'm pretty sure down the road there will be an execution in Bicep, so that whenever you
Oh,
take your Bicep
absolutely.
file and run Bicep on it, you can also say, go ahead and apply the Bicep file. Just go
Yep.
ahead and do it.
I have
Um,
a sneaking suspicion you're right about that one.
yeah, I think that there's plans. I don't know when. Now, I want to give people watching the show some to-dos here. One is go out here. You can find the ways to get this. And I see releases now.
It's super easy to get to.
Yeah, it's super easy to get to Azure Bicep, and then whenever so you can download the physics here. I'm showing this on the screen here. You can download the
Yep.
physics and put that into Visual Studio Code, and then you can also download the executables here. So feel free to do that. And then there's actually some really good samples in here.
Yep.
So go and find the stuff and take a look, give it a shot, try it out, and you know what? Provide some feedback
Provide
in the
feedback,
issues. Yes, ask questions, provide feedback. That's what we want
please.
from people. So please do that. That'd be great. So for those of you
Yep.
who have said, "Oh, ARM language is hard and I don't like it," this is your chance to give your feedback
To get away. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
to get away from that, get into Bicep and provide some feedback. Help shape the product. Help shape it. It's going to
Absolutely.
remain open source.
Yep.
So, and
Yeah,
if you're feeling
exactly.
even up to it,
That's the beauty of it
provide a
is.
PR
Oh, yes,
code.
yes. Don't be afraid.
Mm-mm.
Don't be afraid. Don't fear the PR.
If you want to, if there's a specific functionality you want, guess what?
Yes.
You can go write it yourself. That's what open
Absolutely.
source is about. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anything else about Bicep?
Wait a minute. That's what open source is? I thought open source just meant that you could just take and take and take and not have to contribute
It's
back.
free like a puppy. Free like a
Amen.
puppy.
I kid. I kid. We
Okay.
all know. We all know the joys of open source.
That's right. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Okay.
So
So
on to the next.
yeah, and so this one to me is really important. I personally feel that amongst all the cloud providers, Microsoft is one of the only ones, if not the only one, that truly understands. Number one, not only are our customers going to be multi-cloud, but they're also going to have to support multiple types of environment integrations. For example, on-prem to Azure, Azure to AWS, GCP to Azure, et cetera, right? And I feel like we do the best job by far in enabling capabilities across clouds.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
when you think about how you can actually use the agents, right? For Azure agents for Security Center,
Yep.
Azure agents for monitoring across clouds or on premises, right? We have Azure Arc, which yes, we do have. There are some competitive like similar capabilities, but I think we truly understand maybe better than anybody else what our customers need and want,
Yeah.
right? So I brought this one up because I thought it was a really good example of understanding those needs. In this particular case, we're providing an AWS, Amazon Web Services, connector so that you can use Azure Cost Management plus the billing, right? So we do the cost management and billing component in Azure, but you can use a connector so that you can also do it with AWS.
Right. You can pull in all of your
So
AWS costs, pull them into the
exactly.
cost management in Azure, combine those two, and send out a bill or distribute or whatever it is you want to do
Whether
with
you're
the
doing
cost.
show back, charge back, bill back, yeah, exactly. And the cool thing about it is if you go through this particular blog post, it doesn't take a whole lot to set it up, right? It's basically what, one, two, three steps.
Go set up the AWS cost in the portal, create a role in AWS, set up the cost management connector, done.
Exactly. I mean,
And
it's
then
that
it's,
simple to create the proverbial single pane of glass
yep.
to see your stuff.
And then we're all on to viewing your costs. How do I take a
Yep.
look at my AWS costs? How do I combine it with my Azure? How do I estimate future spend using the forecasting? I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yep. That's very cool. And so again, I feel like we really do such an amazing job in understanding our customer needs, knowing we're not the only vendor out there, knowing we're not the only cloud partner that you have on your journey in your data center exit strategies or your data center compromising, right? Knowing that we provide these capabilities that I really feel make us best in class in regards to cross-platform, cross-pollination, cross-resource monitoring, management, and utilization.
Yeah, it's really important to be willing to work with these other partners because we know that you have additional partners that we need to work with,
Absolutely.
and honestly, AWS is one of them. And so we're willing to do that. Now, the one thing I can say is that this is there is a charge for this eventually.
Of course.
For the first 90 months, though, it's free, so you can take a look. 90 months,
Wait, well, 90 days?
90 days,
I was gonna say, I could be retired. No, no, probably not 90 months.
90
Shoot.
months, not 90 months, 90 days. And then there is a charge for it. But go out there and set that up. Go out and see what it does. You can also set up budgets for AWS costs. So um, yeah, so this is really important. It's good stuff coming up here. So. And Rick, this is something we were talking about just before the show started. If you're not doing this kind of cost management and managing to this, you're just really not getting the most out of cloud.
100% agree. Anybody who's anybody has heard me say there are really four phases of cloud adoption. The last phase is exploit the cloud. You've all heard me say that by now. And if you're not managing and optimizing costs, you're not exploiting the cloud. It's
Yep,
that simple.
yep, yep. So go for it. We want to help you do that. We want to help you lower your costs so that you can move on to other projects. So
Exactly. Whether it's with us or with somebody else, let's keep those costs in check and let's make sure we're focusing on features and functionality and not cost control, cost containment.
that's right. All
Yeah,
right. Cool.
awesome.
All right. So I'm scrolled up here. I don't want that. So I thought that people only used SQL Server.
You know what? I heard a rumor um, that there actually are other database technologies
That's
out there.
right.
Maybe
We know
misses.
this. We know
I
this,
heard a
actually.
rumor. No, we kid. We kid. So there's been well, when we started our journey way back in 2010, February, roughly, I believe February 10th of 2010, we did RTM Azure, and it came with a whopping Azure SQL database.
Yep.
And over the years, we've recognized the fact that it there's other options out there, and there are things that there are dependencies that customers have, or they have maybe optimized an application, for example, for PostgreSQL or
Hmm.
MySQL or some of the other technologies, and have come to the conclusion that, well, we really don't want to migrate the app until you have some sort of support for database technology
Yep.
X,
And
right?
those two big ones have been Postgres and MySQL.
Very
And
much so.
and
Those have been front and center.
yeah, and so we do have both. Although this article really features and kind of talks a little bit about PostgreSQL and kind of what we're doing with Postgres. Like for instance, that it's 100% open source. It's built on the community edition of Postgres. So you
So,
don't.
hold on, and I want to make sure we emphasize that this is not a forked version of PostgreSQL that we put some secret sauce into that we didn't give back to the open source community,
Right.
correct?
That's right. It's
So,
just it's
just
just
this is
it's just
one
community
hundred
edition.
percent open source.
100% open source. Microsoft is a big believer in open source. I mean, obviously, I think anybody who's really been around Microsoft lately knows that we're a big open source contributor, and this is no different
Yep.
because we want to make sure that not only we get the value out of Postgres, but whenever you are a consumer of open source, the expectation is that you contribute to the open source.
Oh,
That's really the
well,
expectation.
absolutely, absolutely. And so we didn't just say, okay, we're gonna exploit this open source community and we're gonna charge for it, and we're not gonna give back. Basically, it's 100% open source, and we also give back to that open source community, right?
That's
So
right.
which is really kind of cool. And not only that, but it's fully managed.
Yep.
Okay, so this isn't an open source technology that you've got to download, you've got to compile, you've got to install, and oh, by the way, you've got to use this for this version of Linux and this for this version of Windows or whatever it is. This is fully managed.
Yep.
This is a Postgres database as a service on Azure, just like Azure SQL database. So
Yep.
you can do things like spread your replicas across availability zones,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
You can do, I can't say for 100% that we do have a complete parity, but we do have PostgreSQL for, we've got enterprise grade security and compliance capabilities.
Yep.
We do have hyperscale, which is a capability that we also
Yep.
offer with Azure SQL database. So this isn't like we just said, well, we need a Me Too thing. This is, hey, we're committed to this,
Yep.
and we're going to make it just as good or just as reliable, just as performant, just as strong, secure, and as Azure SQL database.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out two things here. One is that for this Postgres, just like for Azure Database, we have the advanced threat protection available
Yep.
for Postgres, and so and also we provide performance recommendations. So we want to make sure that your database is run well and run securely. The other one is I've actually been working with a customer on a Citus, you know,
Oh yeah.
POC. So this is
Yeah.
kind of the hyperscale capability. It's kind of a, shared nothing type architecture, which reminds me a
Yep.
lot of parallel data warehouse. For those who
Very
have been
much.
around for a while, it's
Or affectionately referred to as PDW back in the day.
PDW, that's right,
Yep.
or APS for those who are a little newer.
Yes,
But
that's true.
those kinds of constructs are available, and we're working hard to make that Citus product available in Azure as well. And so,
Exciting.
if you are wanting to do a large-scale data warehousing on Postgres, and Postgres evidently is very popular in the data science world, and you want to do
Hmm.
some big data
Very much so.
warehousing, check out Citus on Azure
Yeah.
for Postgres.
Well, and the other thing I would say is we do see a lot of customers who maybe have certain cases they may be an Oracle shop, which is fine, but they may have some use cases that don't necessarily require all the horsepower and all the other features that come with Oracle.
Hmm.
PostgreSQL is highly compatible with Oracle, certain Oracle capabilities. So if you're migrating from say Oracle to PostgreSQL, you'll see very similar language constructs, very similar feature capabilities in certain cases. I'm not obviously not all, but so we do see in certain cases customers coming to us saying, "Hey, we'd like to actually, use in this particular situation PostgreSQL. Um, how is this going to work? How is?" And we say, "Well, click this button to deploy it, and make sure you've got it, configure it, and off you go, right? And
Hmm.
then you can connect to it with your standard, the same tools that you would connect to if you were using Postgres on SQL or in one of the other clouds as
Yeah,
well."
yeah. So if you have one more thing,
Yeah.
there is also upcoming Postgres blog series, so keep checking back for that. We're gonna have some good stuff on that. So if you want more details, you can see that in this blog post. Please feel free. You can also catch this in the show notes. Go
Yep.
there, bounce you back here. You can see it. The show notes are available at azureflashnews.com, which will take you to GitHub, but you can check it out there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so more information to come on the Postgres database capability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bigger, better, stronger, faster. Always doing something, right?
Okay. All right. So let's build resistant applications. Any interest in that?
So I do, but I think isn't all I have to do is just, click this one button and say deploy Kubernetes on Azure and I'm done.
Yep. That's all it takes.
That's all it takes, right?
Just
I don't
hit the
have to do anything.
Kubernetes button. You know
There's no
that
considerations, there's no cost concerns, there's no
no,
security concerns,
no, it's a
right?
piece of cake. Do you remember those big red buttons that just says easy button and you say
Yes.
and it just says that was easy. That
That
was
was, and it
easy.
was a commercial for, I believe, one of the office supply
Staples. I think it was
companies. Staples,
Staples. I think it
thank
was
you. Good
Staples.
memory, dude.
So
Nice work.
anyway, well, and actually, as it turns out, we're kidding. If you couldn't tell,
Yes, we are.
uh, there's a lot to deploying Kubernetes. There's a
If
lot
you
of
didn't note the hints of sarcasm in our voice, your palate is not sophisticated.
uh, Kubernetes can do some amazing stuff,
Really amazing
but with great
stuff.
power comes great responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
So
Love the superhero
that's
reference
right.
there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Peter Parker.
I believe it was
Uh,
Spider-Man. Yep.
Yeah, that was
Thank you.
Spider-Man. But
Okay.
it turns out that there are some things that you have to help take care of, and so we want to help you build resilient applications on Kubernetes.
Yep, apps 100%. And the interesting thing about it is just like any other architecture, right? When we talk about distributed versus n tier versus, all the different architectures I've grown up with, right? You still have the same primary tenets, high availability, resiliency, performance, security. Those don't go away. I have yet to see somebody architect those concerns away.
Yeah, that's right. So
Right? I mean, those are always still there.
yeah, you really have to keep doing it. We really want to help you make these things available to your customers close by, and we want to make it easy for you to notice that things are going wrong, that your Kubernetes cluster is not
Yes.
going well. So we are investing a lot in, the operational aspect, the
Yep.
monitoring, stuff like that. So stuff is
Yep.
really important.
So this particular post, it's really good, and it's really good. I mean, I would expect nothing less, but of course, our own Brendan Burns, corporate vice president of Azure Compute, is the author. And as most of you know, he came to us from Google, where he was one of the, I believe, co-inventors
Hmm.
of Kubernetes when Google was had built it.
Yeah, that's right.
And so when he talks, like E.F. Hutton, if you're old like I am, you know what I'm referring to. People listen.
Yes, that's right.
And so when he talks about things like improving latency and operational efficiency and securing by building secure by design, using those pillars and those best practices, right? There's a lot of different things that you have to think about, right? And cost optimization, right? One of the big drivers of Kubernetes is getting density, more density than if you just provision a bunch of VMs. But if you're just taking 5 containers and provisioning them into an AKS cluster, and then taking 5 more containers and provisioning them into
Another
another AKS
cluster.
cluster, did you really save money, or in fact, did you actually even end up spending more money because of that?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not just as simple. So I definitely recommend it's a great read. There's been Brendan Burns now, I think, has published a few different books now, a kind of a starter's guide to Kubernetes,
Hmm.
distributed architecture books. There's a guide to Kubernetes best practices. There's a lot of really good reads out there and references best practices, patterns. And oh, by the way, you've got KubeCon coming up in the European Union, so I'm
Hmm.
sure it's going to be virtual.
I would assume so.
Um, Yep, exactly. But there's a ton of resources, and so I guess the point of this is, it's not a silver bullet,
Yeah.
right? It's not a magic button, like you said. It's not a big red easy button. There's some considerations that have to be brought along the way. For example, if you're going to use service mesh, what's the impact of the sidecar, envoy pattern going to be if you use something like Istio, and is it going to create latency? Is your ingress controller going to, require a ton of overhead? There's a lot to think about, and
Yeah.
I don't want people to think that it's just click it and forget it. It's not, but having said that, I think, Mark, you brought this up originally in the beginning of this particular topic. It's really powerful,
Yeah, yeah, and I,
really powerful.
I think there's one more thing I want to highlight in here, and that is just for instance, dealing with secrets is not easy, and
No,
even though Kubernetes has support for secrets, we want to make it even easier by integrating Key Vault and making it super
exactly.
easy for Kubernetes to integrate to understand secrets, and then to have with a provider model, and then writing a provider for that works in with uh, the uh, Key Vault. I'm gonna get that word out. It's gonna come. I'm gonna do it. I know it.
Yeah. Sounds like I was right. Like it's 2 syllables.
sounds like sounds like He Vault. Okay, so Key Vault. So anyway, and also some really good stuff where we're giving up some source code to the community, and that's being
Exactly.
adopted the container storage interface, and it's also being used by HashiCorp Vault. So you know,
Yep. Yep.
we want to make this easy. We want to make it pluggable. We want to make this workable with others. So
Absolutely.
this is
If you
really
want to
important.
plug in your own networking stack, if you want to use KubeNet, if you want to use Azure CNI, that's the whole point of this, right? Is it's also kind of a smorgasbord, if you will, or a buffet, and you can kind of pick and choose, right? Whether it's service mesh, ingress controller, networking
Yep.
stack, security, secrets management. There's a lot of choices, but there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
So, again, this is a great read. It's an easy read. Brendan Burns, again, awesome person, very smart, and does a great job laying this out. Kind of putting this to paper and getting you to understand what you need to think about.
Yeah. One more thing I want to mention that I've just noticed here is there's a link in here, and it says Guide to Kubernetes Best Practices right
Yep.
here. So for those of you watching on the video right there,
Oh, good
um,
call.
and so just know that there's a clickable place there, and we're going to show you how to integrate the firewalls, policies, all the stuff to help get you going. So
Yep. Absolutely.
all right, now another cost management one. We had a cost management one before, right, with AWS, and here we are
Well, but
again.
just
This is important.
but we mentioned in the beginning,
You,
even though COVID has kind of slowed things down, it with the exception of our developers, right?
that's right.
So
They're just going crazy. Uh,
cost allocation is not easy as well, right? We just said Kubernetes isn't easy, right? And we keep telling the cloud's easy. The cloud, it is,
except
but
it's not.
exactly.
Um, one of the things we know happens in the cloud and on-prem,
Yep.
and that I doubt, I doubt that anybody's really figured out how to do this for the most part, is how do you allocate costs across shared resources? So, for instance, how
And shared resources, that's the key thing
it's
to hone in on here, right?
it's not easy. For instance, in Azure, if you have an express route and it's shared by a bunch of people, and let's say
Yep.
you have a model where the IT department really doesn't carry much of a budget. They get all of their budget from the businesses to run. So in other words, if a business wants to use express route, they have to
Yep.
pay for it. If a business unit wants to use app services, they have to pay for it. But the IT department doesn't carry very much budget. If that's your model and you don't really have any money for shared resources for the IT department to carry those shared resources, you need to allocate them out, you're in luck. Azure Cost
Yes, because
Management,
somebody's got to pay for it.
that's right. Somebody's got to pay for it. But if it's shared, you need to just allocate it. So in other words, if it's the express route and there's 5 different departments using it, you want to allocate it out 20% to each department.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe it literally is a 20, I mean, you could absolutely take the easy route, and just literally, say if we've got 10 people, 10%, right? The other thing you can do is you can think about it when you talk about cost allocation, at least you know who your consumers are.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, if you wanted to drill through and take it a step further, you don't necessarily have to just, you can percent to allocate resource, which is definitely going to be the easiest way to do it, right? But you can also kind of trend over time and see who really is the big consumer, because you do have that availability. You do have some of those metrics depending on how you've tagged your resources and done some other things appropriately. And if you've kind of set those foundational pieces in place, you can kind of fine tune that percentage, right? You can kind of tweak it every once in a while to say, you know what, we thought this guy was only consuming, or this gal was only consuming 10% of resources, but as it turns out, they're actually consuming closer to 25.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
so you can adjust that accordingly.
yeah, and I think this is interesting because you can determine the way this is split. So
Right.
here's some options. Okay.
Yep.
So first of all, basically what you do is you identify your shared costs. In other words, you can identify them by tag or by resource group or by subscription. Okay.
Which is cool.
Which is cool. So in other words, you can apply a tag to all of your shared resources no matter where they are. Then you can specify where to move them,
Yep.
and you specify where to move them to resource groups. Okay. And so what happens then is you say, I want to distribute them evenly. In other words, just if there's 10 groups, it's going to divide it by 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's proportional to cost. So, in other words, of those, let's say we're still back to this 10 resource groups. If one resource group gets 90% of the total cost of those 10, guess how much
Mm-hmm.
of the shared resource they get? 90%. Okay.
Right.
So
Yep.
proportional to the total cost of those resource groups. Now, here's another one proportional to either compute, network, or storage cost. So, in other words, if you want to say of all of the network costs in those resource groups, I want to distribute express route according to the network that those are using, like bandwidth or something.
Absolutely. Yep.
You can do
Yep.
it to network, and you can also just say, I just have a custom
Boom.
distribution. 1% of this one, 38,
Yep.
58, 3. You do whatever you want.
And I suspect a lot of people are going to start with kind of maybe the distribute
Yeah,
evenly.
that's
I
a lot
think
better
people
than
start
nothing.
there. But customers, I mean, I've seen some really amazing stuff come out of our customer, out of necessity, right? Innovation or what do we call it? The mother is the or
Necessity is
necessity
the mother
is the
of
mother
invention.
of invention.
Yeah.
And so I've seen some amazing stuff come out of our customers, and these types of things. I suspect very quickly you're going to start to see patterns and practices where customers get really sophisticated in how they actually learn to allocate the cost assignments to, like you said, by tag, by resource group, or whatever it is. I bet we're going to see some really cool stuff come out
Yeah,
of this.
I could imagine storage being a really good one. So in other words, if you have departments that are like, I'm not in Azure very much, we haven't moved yet, and so you can actually go back and say, well, okay, why don't we distribute it according to how much everyone is storing, and that would be a kind of a proxy for where our department is big in Azure, our department is not that big in Azure, and then you spread out the costs like that. But
Exactly.
right off the bat, distribute evenly is a lot better than not having a
Totally agree.
clue what to do. You're like,
Totally
I
agree.
have this
Yeah.
I have this shared
Uh,
resource and I don't know what to do with it. How do I do it? Now you can at least
don't know.
go even, and that's better than
Done.
nothing.
Yeah. At least you're not getting a divide by zero error in your Excel spreadsheet.
That's right. Or that you have leftover costs that the IT
Oh
department has
yeah.
to pick up, and they're like, we don't really have a budget to do this.
We're a cost center, man.
Yeah,
We're all about cost avoidance, cost takeout. We can't take more
right,
spend on.
right. So, so
right?
this is
So that
cool.
no, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I hope that people will go out there and take a look at this. I've spent time with customers doing some Azure cost management work or cost analysis, and I'm just telling you, this is pretty good. The way that Azure does cost management, you can find stuff
Mhm.
out, you can figure out who's using what, how much it's costing, and what's causing a bill to go up. These are all available, and if you're having trouble, go take a look at Azure Cost Management. You want to know more? Go take a look. Azure Cost Management, Azure Cost Analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah, highly recommend it. Especially as you can see, as we continue our journey through the CAF, the Cloud Adoption Framework, regardless of where you are, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can be the most sophisticated company in the world. I guarantee you somebody from the outside could come in and take a look and go, oh, you know what? Here's one more thing you could do.
Yeah,
So even when you think you've got it literally locked and locked and loaded and ready to be optimized to the gills, if you're a fish,
yep,
there's always going to be opportunities to squeeze a little bit more money or at least get a little bit more visibility into where that money's going.
that's right. That's right. So
Yeah,
go take a
awesome.
look at Azure Cost Management. It keeps getting better and better all the time. And
Yes,
guess what? You didn't have to do anything, upgrade, buy a license, or anything to use it. So go out there and give it a shot.
exactly.
Okay, well, I think that's it for the show today.
It really is. This was a great set of announcements. I'm really excited about Bicep. I
Yeah,
look forward to working with it because I love Terraform. I'm a big fan of the product, and if it's anything even near Terraform, which it'll probably have a long ways to go before it gets there, but I like working with that DSL type of
hmm,
construct because for somebody like me, it just makes sense in my head. The logic, it's like, oh, I get it. It makes sense. I don't, it doesn't confuse me, which isn't hard. I'm just going to be completely honest with you, but
it's not
it's
easy
very
to confuse
straightforward.
you, or
No, it's not. It's not hard to confuse
it's
me.
not hard to confuse you. Okay.
No. See,
Uh,
I just confused.
you confuse me. No. Yeah, and the other thing that I'm really excied about Bicep is just that it's really going to really give us the opportunity to have really great IntelliSense stuff. So, I,
Yes, I love
can
IntelliSense.
anybody tell that Rick and I are kind of excited about this Bicep thing?
I know, right?
I think we're
And oh,
pretty
by the way,
excited.
I hear there's a pending announcement.
There is a pending announcement. It is already public out on the GitHub,
Yep.
but there is going to be some blog posting going on. So, but you guys
Sure.
saw it here first, and so go check it out when you have a chance.
Absolutely. And before we go, one thing I'm going to say is, if you've pre-ordered a Surface Duo, they have actually been shipped. So I
What?
think the 10th was supposed to be the day.
Oh wow! Did you
I
order one?
got, I did, and I got an email with an invoice and a tracking number saying mine's on its way. So hopefully, if it's here by the next time you and I talk,
We'll
Mark,
get to see it.
we'll do a little screen share and see
That
we'll see
sounds.
what it's all about. Now I can say, listen, it's first gen, right? So we know just like our first gen Surface products with their Surface Go, Surface Book, Surface, there may be some issues.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I like the idea of a new device segment,
Hmm.
just like when we created a new device segment with the Surface Book, with the
Hmm.
and the Surface, just the
Surface
Surface Pro,
Pro. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Surface Pro.
This is a new device segment. I'm going to be really curious to see. I'm going to be paying close attention to see if this type of form factor is really what people are looking for. For
Yeah.
me personally,
Yeah.
I like the fact that number one, I can fold it, right? So I've
Smaller.
got storage. But number two, it's something that you can quickly, easily whip out. If when we get back to traveling on airplanes, right? It's an e-reader. I can catch up on email. It's LTE. It's unlocked. I can plug a SIM chip in it. It's all the good things that you would want. So hopefully it lives up to the hype. I'm excited. I'm optimistic, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So looking forward to maybe like I said, a little dog and pony of that.
Yeah, yeah, that looks good. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, Rick, if people want to catch you, where can they find you? If people want to send you some correspondence.
As usual, you can catch me via email at rick, W-E-Y, at Microsoft.com. Or, of course, you can always message us at Azure Flash News, which is our Twitter handle. And I monitor that, so I make sure I respond to people as fast as possible.
Yep.
And how about you, Mark?
If you guys want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to take your emails or your tweets at mgarner on Twitter or mgarner at Microsoft.com. You can catch me there. Feel free to email me, no problem. Uh, I guess that's it for the show. today.
That is for the show. I just want to thank you guys so much and gals for tuning in. As Mark said, if you like us, subscribe, click like, give us 5 stars on iTunes.
Yep.
If not, tell us how we can, make it better. Yeah, we're always looking for feedback. So, yeah, we always look forward to chatting with you. So, of course, until the next time we meet, keep your fingers on your sterilized keyboard and your head in the
All
clouds.
right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon,
Take
evening,
care.
morning, whatever it is. Thanks.
Thank you.